Okay, I want to welcome everybody to tonight's forum for the Kenosha County Circuit Court Judges, Branch 1 and Branch 2. But before we start the forum, I'm going to allow Mr. Marine to just say a few things about the host organization, which is Forward Latino.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very important forum that we're holding this evening. How perfect is it that today we're going to be introducing to you, for many of you for the first time, the candidates for Circuit Court Branch 1 and 6 in Kenosha County, right? As the entire county, and in fact the nation, deals with the questions and issues of social justice. Here we are all coming together on the birthday of that great civil rights champion, Cesar Chavez. So glad that all of you are joining us here. As Yolanda Adams stated earlier, I'm the National President of Forward Latino. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy and service organization with members in over 29 states. We deal with everything from immigration-related issues to education, access to healthcare, employment, moving up in the job in your profession of choice, etc. So if there's ever anything we can do for you, just give us a call at 833-LATINO-1. Once again, that's 833-LATINO-1, or visit us at www.forwardlatino.org. With that, let me send it back to Yolanda.
Okay, thank you, Dale. I'm going to start out by giving you a brief bio on each of our candidates. So for Branch 1, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order, we have Judge Benitez Morgan, and she is a graduate from John Marshall Law School in Chicago and holds 2 Master of Law degrees. As an attorney, whether in private practice or public servant, she has practiced in every area of law that a circuit judge hears. As a circuit court judge, she has presided over every type of case that comes before the circuit court. She is currently presiding over a split rotation of juvenile and criminal matters. For 14 years, Judge Benitez Morgan worked as an attorney in Kenosha, advocating for people with mental health needs, cognitive or developmental impairments, juvenile and children in need of protection or services, represented parents in termination of parental right cases, represented juveniles and adults accused of criminal acts, and for the past year, she has been the presiding judge for the Kenosha County Circuit Court Branch 1. She has a proven track record of litigation and a judicial experience of treating everyone who interacts with the court system fairly and with respect, and a dedication to not only the rule of law, but to the citizens of Kenosha. Judge Benitez Morgan. Our next candidate is Gerard Dugvillo, who is also running for Branch 1. He is the current Judicial Court Commissioner for the Walworth County Circuit Court. In that role, he presides over circuit court cases every day of the week. He has been on the bench since 2016, making the tough decisions we expect from our court officials, as well as receiving the same training and educational classes taught to all the circuit court judges across the state. He has also worked tirelessly to expand fair and equal access to the courts by advocating for and presiding over a driver license recovery court, overhauling small claims court to get fair access to pro se litigants, and treating all those who appear before him with respect and dignity. Previously, Gerard served as an assistant DA for over 7 years, prosecuting every type of criminal case handled in our circuit courts. He specialized in handling complex financial and white-collar crimes, helping countless small businesses in their most vulnerable hour. Outside of the courtroom, Gerard has also worked as an educator, teaching law classes at Herzing University in Kenosha, as well as teaching at Carthage College in their paralegal certification program for a number of years. He is a Kenosha native and has been and always will be a Kenosha resident. His family has called Kenosha home for over 100 years, and he currently lives on the city's north side with his wife and 2 daughters. For Branch 6, again in alphabetical order, we have Angela Cunningham. Angela is a former public interest attorney and former prosecutor, and is now a criminal defense attorney and guardian ad litem with her own firm, ADC Law Office, LLC, located in Kenosha. She moved to Western Kenosha County as a child. She is a graduate of Wilmot High School, where she ran track and played the trumpet in the band. Angela attended undergraduate and graduate school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in social welfare and women's studies and a master of social work. She later went on to obtain her law degree from Northwestern Pritzker School of Law after working in the social work field for a few years. Angela has always been involved in community. She currently serves on the Catholic Charities Board of Trustees and the Board of Directors for the Urban League of Racine and Kenosha. She previously served on the Board of Directors for the Kenosha Community Health Center and Hope Council. From nonprofit board membership to grassroots organizing and tutoring elementary students, Angela goes the extra mile to help make her community a better place. And finally, for Branch 6, we have Angelina Gabriel. She is the Deputy District Attorney of the Kenosha County District Attorney's Office and is seeking to be elected Judge of Branch 6. As the Deputy DA, she supervises 16 Assistant District Attorneys in the office, is involved in setting policy for the office, and is entrusted with some of the most serious cases in the office. She is running for judge because she believes Kenosha deserves a judge with proven experience in court handling serious cases and important legal issues, and a proven commitment to the community. Angela attended Bradford High School and UW-Madison, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts. She then attended UW-Madison Law School, graduating with honors. In 1995, she began her career with the Kenosha County DA's office, serving the people of Kenosha for over 25 years. Angela has worked with the current DA in Kenosha to bring additional treatment opportunities for those who need it most, and chances to avoid prosecution for those suffering from addiction through diversion programming. She has worked with representatives on legislation elder abuse, because it has always been about protecting Kenosha for her. She has worked to find long-term solutions by serving as an active member on several multidisciplinary teams with key stakeholders on issues of child deaths, human trafficking, sexual assault, KIT initiative, and child abuse. Her integrity, work ethic, and body of work has earned her the bipartisan and nonpartisan endorsements of many of Kenosha County's elected officials. And with that, we're going to move on to we're going to move on and let each of the candidates introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about themselves. So we're going to start with the Branch 1, and we'll go in the same order. We're going to go with Benitez Morgan, followed by Mr. Dougville. And then for Branch 6, we're going to go with Angela Cunningham, followed by Angelina Gabriel. So if you would like to start and introduce yourselves, and we're going to give you about 3 minutes each to do that. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here today. As Ms. Adams has already said, I'm Judge Larissa Benitez Morgan. I am the current judge for Kenosha County Circuit Court Branch 1. And I'm here today because local elections are important, and so service to the community in which you live. I lived here in Kenosha for almost 24 years. I've raised my children here. And I don't just talk about how important community service is, I've actually lived it. I've dedicated my legal career to working in Kenosha for the people who live here in Kenosha. As it's already been mentioned, I've practiced as an attorney in Kenosha since 2006, and then as a Kenosha Assistant State Public Defender from 2008 until 2020, when I was appointed as the Circuit Court Judge for Branch 1 when Judge Bastianelli retired. Every day as a Kenosha judge, I make decisions that make victims whole. I provide for any rehabilitative needs and protect the community. Every day, I continue to serve Kenosha. Throughout this pandemic, which is why we're here on Zoom today, I've held court every day from the Kenosha County Courthouse. The door to Branch 1 has been open, and court's been available for all to come in and see or watch on YouTube and determine for yourselves what kind of judge I am, not what kind of judge I hope to be. I've spoken in our schools, I've worked with our kids, all of the service providers we have in Kenosha, as well as the community agencies from DCFS, Adult Family Services, Mental Behavioral Health Services, foster families, probation and parole, law enforcement, as well as with our treatment courts. not to mention serving on a variety of different judicial and legal committees that serve our community. So that's who I am, and thank you.
Thank you. And next?
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you. And
And
I'm
let me
Jared.
just jump in real quick. And forgive me, I think we may have gotten it wrong. It's Jared Degvillo. So let
There
me
we go.
okay.
That's quite all right. Thank you. It's, you know, it's one of the curses of the name is always dealing with that, but that's not a problem whatsoever. I'm the one odd one out is I'm the one male, so it's easy to figure out who I am. But as Ms. Adams stated previously, I am Jared Dugvillo. I'm running for Circuit Court Judge Branch 1 here in Kenosha. I am and always have been a Kenosha resident. With my daughters now, it's been 5 generations that we've been here and a part of this community. I have worked in this community. I've handled cases here, special prosecution when I was in the DA's office up in Racine. I've also spent a number of years as an educator, as was mentioned, teaching law classes at Herzing University, in-person classes, and then also teaching for a number of years at Carthage College. So I certainly know the value of being a part of and working within your community. Outside of that, I've also done volunteering. I've worked extensively with My Team Triumph, which is an organization that works to put disabled individuals with able-bodied athletes to help them compete in events that they would otherwise be unable to do so. And I specialized in doing that here in Kenosha and working with those people here in Kenosha. I've also served as a mentor and spoken at the schools here as well. So that's certainly my involvement here is not something to brush past. I also have a significant history as both a prosecutor, working with communities, working with victims, working with small businesses. And then I've also, as stated, I've also been on the bench as a circuit court commissioner since 2016, making all of those tough decisions, holding evidentiary hearings, making complex and said difficult decisions that we expect from our judges. Outside of that, I've also worked hard to make a positive impact in my position through the law, because we're all in this unique position, all 4 of us are, is that we have these tools available to us. So I think looking and deciding on, you know, what you're able to do with that is absolutely important. And I've tried to do that, and that's something that's always been on the forefront of my legal career. As a court commissioner, I have pushed and been a part of our treatment courts and diversion programs, and also completely redesigning small claims so people without an attorney can have a fair shake when they come into our courts. All of those hearings are before me, as well as driver's license recovery with people who don't have a license, which disproportionately affects people of color. So the history is there, and we'll certainly get into more of that as we go along. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, Angela Cunningham for Branch 6 is next.
Thank you. And I just want to start off by thanking Forward Latino for hosting this forum this evening. My name is Angela Cunningham, and I'm running for Kenosha County Circuit Court Judge Branch 6. I'm running for judge to ensure justice for all in Kenosha County. I first thought of the idea and thought that I wanted to be judge when I was a prosecutor at the Milwaukee District Attorney's Office. I had to go to the preliminary hearing room to handle a preliminary hearing for one of my cases. And in this courtroom, I walk into the room, and in the gallery is a sea of Black and brown faces. I walk up to a plexiglass wall that separated the gallery from the other side of the courtroom, and waited for the deputy to buzz me into the other side. On the other side of this glass were defense attorneys, my colleagues at the district attorney's office, bailiffs, law enforcement officers waiting to testify in their preliminary hearing, as well as court staff and the court commissioner who was presiding over the preliminary hearing cases. Everybody on that side of the glass wall was white. And I just remember that feeling that I had seeing that stark divide. Prior to that, I knew that there were a lack of diversity in court staff and on the bench. And I also knew that there were disproportionate numbers of individuals who find themselves involved in the criminal justice system. But it was that day in that particular courtroom that that visual made it very real for me. And it was there that I decided that I wanted to run for judge to help diversify the bench and to help ensure that people who are coming to court see a courtroom and a bench that looks like the community. I grew up, just a little bit about me and my background. I grew up in Trevor, Wisconsin. I'm a proud graduate of Wilmot Union High School. After I went away to college, I became pregnant with my son after my first year of college. And one thing that I knew I didn't want to become a quote unquote statistic. And so I made the decision to go back to school, finish my career, or finish school so that I could get a career that would sustain myself and my son. I transferred to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I have an undergraduate degree in social welfare and women's studies, as well as a master's degree in social work. I have experience working in the social work field, and my law degree is from Northwestern University. With my background, I am actively involved in the community. As Yolanda pointed out, some of the board membership that I'm involved in grassroots organizations and coalitions, all tasked with making Kenosha the best community that can be. So I want to use my personal and professional experience to ensure justice for all in Kenosha. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next is Angelina Gabriel.
Thank you so much. So I am Angelina Gabrielle. I am the Deputy District Attorney in the Kenosha DA's office. As a prosecutor, I've dedicated myself for 25 years to protecting Kenosha and giving a voice to victims. And that's why I'm now running for judge. I really believe that Kenosha deserves a judge with my experience and my commitment to this community. My father was a single dad. He was an immigrant from Italy. He moved to this country at age 28 with very little money and a pregnant wife. He worked long, hard hours in an ice cold freezer as a butcher, and he was uneducated, self-taught himself because he had always wanted to be a doctor, but where he came from, he was denied these educational opportunities because of poverty. His family did not have the money to send him to college. And sadly, his dreams of being a doctor were thwarted because of that. So for him, it was very important that his children have a better life. As first generation, we have striven to honor the sacrifices that my father has made. He taught me that hard work and education is the key to success. I graduated from UW-Madison in 1992. And then I immediately went to law school at UW Law School. While I was there, I participated in moot court. I participated in legal clinics. I was a coach for moot court. I won an award for legal writing and for oral advocacy. When I graduated from law school, though, I joined the Kenosha County District Attorney's Office. And even though there were opportunities to work in places that were much more lucrative, my passion was for the goals and the mission of the district attorney's office, which was to seek justice, to seek the truth, and to help people who had been hurt in a variety of ways. And I've been dedicated to that, in particular, focusing on children who were abused and neglected. I worked for many years. Oh, do I just have a minute left? Okay, wow. I worked for many years in juvenile court to deter juveniles from committing crimes, handling civil cases involving abused and neglected kids. I realized so many of these children suffer from the circumstances of mental illness, drug addiction, domestic violence, and trauma. In my personal life, I have had a foster child, actually 2 foster children who have those unfortunate circumstances in their home. So I believe it's my depth of personal and professional experience that really makes me the best candidate for judge.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Once again, we're very pleased to have all of you here and to give the opportunity to Kenosha County residents to hear from each and every one of you. And just to set a few ground rules here, for those of you who are used to seeing a number of political debates, this is a judicial forum. So it's going to be a little bit different here with regards to the questions we're allowed to ask and how we're going to interact with one another. So once again, just really pleased that all of the candidates were able to join us here this evening. And then there's one, you may see a face on the screen that has yet to say anything yet. And let me just say that we're so grateful he's able to join us as well. He's another one of our lead advocates, like Yolanda from Kenosha County. It is Yoger Aguilar. So Yoger, you want to wave to the crowd this evening?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Daryl, for having me today. It's an honor for me to be over here with you guys. And I look forward, to listen to all our candidates and their platforms as well. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. So after I read a question or Yolanda reads a question, before we ask the candidates to respond, Yoger's going to go ahead and read that question in Spanish for our Spanish dominant viewers this evening as well. So let's go ahead and get started.
You're going to do branch 1 and
Yes.
I'm going to do branch 6.
So the first question is going to go to the candidates for branch 1. Now, since Larissa went first in the introductions, Jared, this one's going to go to you first. Okay, we're going to go in the opposite direction. So here's question number 1 for you. And before you respond, Yoger is going to once again read the question in Spanish. So, what qualifies you to be a judge beyond your law degree? Why should Kenosha County residents vote for you?
La pregunta es, ¿qué le califica a usted para ser un juez más allá de su título de derecho? ¿Y por qué el pueblo de Kenosha debería votar por usted?
All right.
Jared, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you.
2 minutes.
All right. Thank you. And, one of the things that I talked about too was, it's not just what you do inside of the courtroom, it's what you've done outside of the courtroom when looking at and deciding on who you want sitting on your bench. I've worked with the organizations to have a big impact on our communities and to help. I've sat on the executive board for Focus on Community, which helps raise awareness for substance abuse with youth and also education for youth. I've been a part of My Team Triumph, which is an organization that works with disabled individuals. I also come from a blue collar family. My grandfather spent his life working at the Chrysler plant here in Kenosha, and my father spent his entire professional career working at the plant in Snap-on here in Kenosha. So I certainly understand and appreciate the value of hard work, rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty. I even spent a summer when I was in college working at Snap-on in a factory. And if that didn't push me to want to go forward and finish college and do that, then I don't know if there's much else that really would. But, I have a history and I have a dedication to service, which goes well before I entered my legal career or even law school. I was a volunteer going back into high school with the Kiwanis Key Club. I was on their executive board for a number of years. Also in college, did that as well with a review board. So it's part of who I am. And I think having that service tried and true is vital. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Larissa, can you respond? Would you like us to read the question again?
I think I wrote it down correctly, and hopefully I did.
Okay.
So, what qualifies me beyond a law degree? Well, I have more than 3 law degrees. I have other degrees as well. I've had a very variety of things in my life that I've done. I've been an educator. I have, in addition to my bachelor's degree, I have my master's and another specialist degree. I was working on my dissertation in education as well for my PhD. But I've also had real world training. I've worked in some of the factories we've had here in Kenosha. I came out here as owning my own company to do data assessment, quality assessment for the automotive industry and the telecommunications industry, and set up all their service lines. So I know what it looks like to work in a factory. I know what it is to be a single parent. I've done that. I know what life is about. I'm 58 years old. I've been around the block a little bit. So I also know what it comes to being somebody of color. You know, that was one of the things that I saw, like Ms. Cunningham did, was the need to have the judiciary be more reflective of the community in which it serves. Kenosha is a very diverse community. Just looking at women, we represent over half the population, yet prior to me taking the bench, only 25% of the women in judges in Kenosha were women. And there was no person of color in the entire second judicial district. That's Kenosha, Racine, and Walworth before my appointment to the bench. So that void has been filled, but it needs to continue. In regards to everything else, my work life, my work ethic, my life experiences allow me to be a capable, tenacious, as well as well-rounded and empathetic judge. It comes with living.
Okay, thank you for those very informative responses. Question number 2 is going to be directed at the branch 6 candidates. And we'll also go in reverse order. So we'll have Ms. Gabriel first, and then followed by Ms. Cunningham. You're each going to have 2 minutes to answer this question. And Yoger will translate into Spanish before you answer. So question number 2 is, can you explain your judicial philosophy in plain English, in layman's terms?
¿Podría explicarnos usted su filosofía judicial en un inglés sencillo?
My judicial philosophy is one of following the rule of law. As judge, I'm not a legislator. I don't represent the will of the people. I don't have independent and isolated contact with constituents. My role is to apply the law, but to apply it fairly and impartially and with compassion when I can. So my philosophy is to treat people as individuals, to listen to what they have to say, to allow people to explain to me what brought them to the place that they are today, what led them to the choices that they have made, that brings them into the courtroom, either as a defendant or as a victim. You know, how did this impact you? What would you like to see happen? And how can we make our community better in terms of deterrence and rehabilitation and treatment? My philosophy always has been to apply the law and to protect our community, and to do so as fairly and impartially as I can without regard to the color of someone's skin, their ethnicity, their gender. It's really important to me that people feel like they can come to court and have confidence in the results, whether they are happy with it or unhappy with it. They will at least respect the decisions that were made because they were done impartially and following the rule of law.
Ms. Cunningham.
My judicial philosophy is to be fair and impartial, to make sure that everybody who appears before me in court has a voice that is heard, to administer justice with compassion, to apply the facts that are presented before me to the law, and to find the best outcomes for both the litigants who appear before me as well as their families and the community as a whole. I want to be, as judge, I want to have the reputation, and I want people to know that when they come into my courtroom, that they will have a voice, that they will be heard, and that even if I give a ruling that's against them, that they know that that justice has been administered fairly and impartially. And I also want, my judicial philosophy is to administer that justice with compassion in every case, not just when I'm able to, but I will do that in every case. And that I think every judge should have that same philosophy, to treat everybody as a human, to not treat, and to look past the issue that is bringing the litigants before him or her, and to see the litigants as whole beings and members of their communities with families and lives and stories and backgrounds. So my philosophy will be to see everybody as a human and to administer that justice with compassion, and to keep our community safe, make sure everybody has a voice, and make sure that I give rulings that are the best outcome for all parties involved.
Wonderful, thank you. Now our next question. Now we head back to branch 1 again. And Larissa, this time you'll go first, and then Jared, you'll go after that. I'll read the question and Yoga will read it again in Spanish. But this third question, and it's something that I know is on the mind of folks all around our country and right here at home in Kenosha County. How will you balance being an independent judge versus an elected official?
¿Cómo planea equilibrar ser un juez independiente y un funcionario público electo?
Well, for me, I think this one's going to be kind of easy. This is my first election, and I don't know how to do an election. I don't have a platform. I mean, how do you run on follow the law? You know, this isn't like a partisan position where you get to run and say, oh, I'm going to reduce your taxes, or I'm going to do this. That's not what judges do. I'm fair, I'm educated, I'm dedicated, I'm a hard worker. Those are my platforms. I don't know what else you could do. I haven't gone out and solicited and done fundraising or anything else. The endorsements I have are organic. People have come to me. I haven't solicited anyone for anything because I think that's important. I do have endorsements. I have endorsements from here in Kenosha, from retired judges here in Kenosha. Judge Warren has endorsed me, local officials, former and whatever. But so to me, it's trying to tell people that you cannot, as a judge, it's a violation of Supreme Court Rule 60.06, belong to a party. You can't. So no, I don't have those types of endorsements. I'm not beholden to any one person or party. My job is to uphold the law and the Constitution. And that's what my judicial philosophy is judicial constraint, reflection, impartiality, sound judgment, reasoned judgment, treating people with respect. But you follow what the law is. I don't get to make it up. That's for the folks in Madison. So I think it's pretty easy when you don't owe anyone anything. It's very easily to just follow the law, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Larissa. And Jared, would you like me to read the question over again, or do you
No, I'm all right.
Okay, good.
Thank you. And, you know, just to kind of pick up where Larissa left off, you're right. You don't owe anything to anybody, but you owe everything to the people that you serve, and you owe that to the community. Absolutely, independence is something that is necessary and vital for a bench that the people can have faith in. When I started as a prosecutor, I didn't even understand, I didn't even know that my boss was either Republican or Democrat. I didn't understand that the head DA was a partisan political position. I was about doing my job. I was about serving the people and doing the best job I could possibly do. I've continued that since 2016. Being a circuit court commissioner, you're under the same rules as our circuit court judges are, that you're not part of a party. I've never been part of a party. That's not something that's been of interest to me. I like doing my job, and I like serving people and giving good outcomes. But how do you balance that with being an elected official? Being an elected official is about having conversations with people in the community, going to different events and taking part in listening. So you hear the issues, you hear the problems, but at the same time, you're not soliciting endorsements from organizations or groups. I have endorsements from Kenosha, Walworth, and Racine, because I have a track record in all of those places. And I didn't take any endorsements or any funds from any groups either. They're all from single individuals. So that's what this is all about. And I think it's makes it easier to stay independent while continuing to serve the people. Thank you.
Wonderful, Jared. Thank you so much for that. Yolanda?
Okay, moving right along. The next question is for the Branch 6 candidates again, and this time we'll have Angela Cunningham, followed by Angelina Gabriel. And the question is, how will you handle conflicts of interest on the bench? Conflicts of interest.
¿Cómo planea manejar los conflictos de interés una vez que esté en el banquillo?
So as judge, if there is a conflict of interest, in the interest of justice and ethics, I would recuse myself. I would make it known to the parties that there is a conflict and would let the parties know and have the case get changed to a different branch. I have done that as a defense attorney, addressed conflicts of interest, and that will not change as a judge. I have no interest in trying to preside over any case where there is even the slightest hint of potential conflict of interest. I have no problems recusing myself so that that justice is served and there is no hint of siding for anybody or of showing favor to either of the litigants who may appear before me.
Okay, next, Angelina.
Thank you. I too, if there was a conflict of interest as it relates to the parties in the courtroom, I would have to recuse myself. As I said earlier, we want to inspire confidence in our judiciary. And if there is a relationship between the judge, whether it be a friendship, social, or other type of relationship where there would be the appearance of partiality, that doesn't inspire confidence. So I would recuse myself, send the case to a different branch of court. And I've done that as, you know, as deputy district attorney in the district attorney's office, we've had to conflict out many cases where we feel that the public, who we have an obligation to, a duty to, might perceive that there's a conflict. And we don't want anyone to think that perhaps we're not impartial in what we're doing. And so we've sent those cases out to other counties to be prosecuted. But there's also the issue of a political or social conflict of interest. You know, there are social issues that some of us have expressed opinions on that have received support from. And I think we have to be really cognizant as members of the judiciary to the appearance of partiality on those issues as well. So I've been really proud that my campaign has not been one of bringing political or social agenda to the courtroom. That's not my goal. It's not my plan. And so I'll be able to hear all kinds of cases that deal with all kinds of issues because I have not, because I plan to apply the law fairly without regard to some social agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you. And now we'll move on to our next question. I can certainly say in my lifetime, I've never seen the questions with regards to justice and the questioning of justice as it exists in our country at the degree it is today. This morning, once again, we're met with the news with regards to the court case, with regards to George Floyd and what happened there. So knowing that, you know, there's the creation of the law, which is the responsibility of the legislature. There's enforcement of the law, but there's also the application of the law. In that context, I'll read this next question. What are the biggest changes you think we need to make in our justice system? And Yoger is going to go ahead and read that in Spanish. And this time, let's go ahead. And Jared, this is for branch one. Jared, you can go first.
¿Cuáles considera usted que son los mayores cambios que debemos hacer en nuestro sistema judicial hoy día?
Great, thank you. And, you know, I think an old adage that many people have held on to in the courts has been, well, when you come into this courtroom, you're going to be heard just as everybody else will be heard. But I think there's been a bit of an awakening, or I hope there has been, that, you know, for the people who are, presiding over cases, and even as prosecutors, defense attorneys, and so on, that you have to look outside of just how people are treated inside the courtroom and look at what brought you there. Because of our nation's history and the history of the various laws that have been in place, it's a big ask for a lot of people to say, trust the system when they come into the courtroom, because there is that history there. And that is brought down from generation to generation, and it's valid. Those concerns are valid, so that when those people walk into the courtroom, they have those preconceived notions that they are not going to get a fair shake, or it may be something that happened outside of the courtroom, whether it be their interaction with law enforcement or otherwise, that they weren't treated fairly, but now they're in this situation. So even though you might be treated fairly once you get there, what brought you there wasn't a fair situation. So it's having to acknowledge that and having to really lean in and have some of those conversations and be open to that is really what's critical for success with our courts going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And Larissa, what are the changes you think we need to be making to our justice system?
I think a lot of the main changes that need to happen along the food chain long before they come to the courtroom and the judges, especially at the circuit court level. You have to start where, how do people even get involved in the criminal justice system to begin with? Is that with law enforcement and how things are being policed? Is it with the charging decisions, or not enough things going to diversion courts? By the time they get to the circuit court judges, they're already enmeshed. This goes back to the other conversation you just had, or the other question you had, in dealing with recusals and impartiality. Judges have to be very careful. We've got a lot of cases right now that are in our courts from what happened this summer during August. I can't speak as to certain things because some of these cases are before me. That's the whole point, right? But the biggest thing we have to do, and the one thing I loved about this pandemic, was Zoom. It gave people the opportunity to watch court, to see what happens, to see what goes on in the courtroom. So one of the things that I'd like to continue is using Zoom whenever possible, so that we can, YouTube and show people what the court system needs to be. And I think the more people can watch and see court, they get to see what the system can be like. When people come into in branch one, everybody gets their day in court. Everybody's heard. Nobody's rushed through anything. I will listen to everyone. I will hear what everybody has to say. And part of that is just being cognizant, treating people with respect. That starts with the minute you walk out your door of your home. And it doesn't stop until you come back in your home and you're still respectful. But we have to change as a society in the way in which we interact with one another and the way we treat each other. But there are so many old tapes that are being played that until people take the time to stop and be aware of themselves and how they see others, a lot of things aren't going to change. But each of us has that within ourselves to change what we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared and Larissa. Yolanda?
Okay. I just want to say that we're going to continue on with the questions until 8 o'clock. So we have about another 15 minutes. Moving on to the next question for branch 6 candidates. And we will go with Gabriel first and Cunningham second. The question is, what reforms do you support to increase access to justice for all? And will you fight for them? Yoga?
¿Qué reformas apoya para incrementar el acceso a la justicia para todos? ¿Planea usted luchar por ellos?
So, excuse me, in terms of access for justice, I think it's really important that we make court a hospitable place, one where judges can explain in layman's terms, as you asked us earlier, what's going to happen. There's so many problems with access to justice right now. There's a lack of affordable resources in terms of getting legal assistance. And certainly I would like to promote additional resources within our community so that people will have the ability to have fair access to justice. I've looked into this eviction mediation program, which I think is really phenomenal, where rather than come to court and have a dispute settled one way or another, parties have an opportunity to talk to one another, to find a solution that will mutually benefit each one of them. So I think it's really important that we keep our minds opened to ideas and work for solutions. You know, there's a limit to what we can do because we don't control the budget for the courthouse, but certainly we can promote that we look for solutions and that we bring in people who can help mediate, that we can have translators or interpreters who will help. So, you know, I think it's important to be aware and have an open mind.
Next.
Yolanda, I apologize. So my computer froze briefly in the middle of your question. So can you repeat the question?
Sure. What reforms do you support to increase access to justice for all? And will you fight for that?
So justice for all is my campaign slogan, and I really mean that. Ensuring equality in the justice system, equality and addressing the inequality based on race and social economic status is not a political issue, it's a human issue. Everyone has a right to be treated equally and fairly in the court system. And it seems like throughout the entire justice system, people are pointing fingers saying someone else is responsible for addressing the inequalities. As judge, I'm not going to point the finger. I'm going to recognize my role as judge in trying to minimize the inequalities in our justice system based on race and the inequalities based on socioeconomic status. And two ways that I want to do that is I will advocate and push for an in-depth study of our court system and to determine whether to determine the extent of the inequalities based on race and socioeconomic status, ableism, and other areas, and then use that to bring parties to the table and have an open and honest conversation and be intentional about how to reduce some of those inequalities. I also want to use that as a starting point to monitor how effective we are at addressing those inequalities and closing some of those gaps. Because there is a serious problem in our court system. And until we admit that and are intentional about fixing it, we are never going to get to a point where there is equal justice under our court system.
Wonderful, thank you for that. The next question along that theme, 5 words and 5 words only, and Yoga will repeat them after I ask the question, and the rest of this time you go first, and then Jared, you'll follow. Those 5 words. How do you define injustice?
¿Cómo definiría el término injusticia?
And Larissa, you'll go first.
And it's 5 words.
You
I'm trying to answer this in 5 words. I'm being really selective with my 5 words here.
The question was 5 words. You get to use more.
Okay, all right. Because I was like, man, I've really got to choose carefully here. All right. See, you're testing me.
You need to be judicious with your words. So.
Well, you know, it's not being given a voice. That to me, I think, is injustice. Is when somebody doesn't have an opportunity to be heard. And we can't allow that. And that's part of this whole equal access and explaining what's going on. And yes, you have a right to have an attorney, but that's only in certain types of cases, right? So if it's criminal cases, they can get a public defender if they can't afford one. And if they don't qualify, they apply with the court and we appoint advocate counsel. But it's what about in all the other cases? Right now, we're part of a CHIPS pilot program when it comes to child welfare cases. So we're finally for the first time able to represent parents and get parents attorneys in child protective cases. And the court has always appointed advocate counsel if you requested it. But what about when people are trying to figure out how to go through a divorce? Or what about when they want to, they just want their deposit back on their apartment. They didn't damage it. Really, they didn't. What are we going to do? So I think that's injustice, is when you're expected to go to a system, and this system's supposed to make this decision that's going to impact you. And you don't know how to navigate the system. You don't know what to fight for, what not to fight for, what you can ask for, or how to do any of those things. That to me is injustice. So that's where we have to think smarter and out of the box and provide tools and resources. As an attorney, I developed a brochure, for example, for the child welfare system before we started helping parents and providing parents with attorneys. It's a brochure that walks you through step one through step, whatever. The entire process of what to expect when you come to court, what's going on, what are your choices, what are your avenues? And it's, 3-page trifold that we would hand out to people. But we need to do more of that type of thing in the court system so that people get to understand it. And that's why we can't get rid of the Zoom access, because you're asking people to take time off from work, or they run the risk of losing their jobs to appear in court for a 5-minute hearing. So we have to better help people if we want them to respect the court system. We have to be respectful of them.
Thank you, Larissa. So Jared, how do you define injustice?
5 words.
We've all 4 of us, we've done plenty of these forums talking to so many different people, and I think Larissa got the benefit of answering this question first, and the other 2 don't even have to answer it. But it is absolutely that. It is having a voice, and it's what do you do to ensure that the people who come into court and come into the system, whether it be criminal, whether it be civil, whether it be family, whether it be related to children, what are you doing to make sure that they don't come in disadvantaged? Because when they do, then they're not going to get a fair shake. And even if the result would have been the same, they're going to walk out of there feeling as though they haven't been heard, feeling as though they haven't gotten that fair chance. And then you don't have justice. You're left with injustice. So the question is, it would be for all of us, then what have you done? What have you done in that regard? I push for an OAR, or driver's license recovery program court out in Walworth County, because I saw it work in Racine, brought it to Walworth, where actually instead of having those cases stuffed into the middle with everything else going on, they're given individual time and attention, so we can actually focus on getting those people their driver's license so they can have a functioning life, and they don't have to go to the grocery store worrying about whether or not they're going to get pulled over. I've also, overhauled small claims court to give those people a fair shake as well. And whether it be putting forms in Spanish or making more forms accessible, that's all part of the process in doing those things, and those things that I've done. Thank you.
Thank you both. Yolanda?
Okay, moving right along. We're getting a lot of questions. As you know, we have our questions around civil rights. We are civil rights advocates and leaders in our community, so we need to know how you're going to deal with these issues. So the next question is going to be for the branch 6 again. Gabriel going first and Cunningham going afterwards. And the question is, how will you deal with injustice when you confront it in your courtroom? Yoger?
¿Cómo planea lidiar con la injusticia cuando la enfrente en su sala de corte?
So I would handle injustice by trying to make things right. As judge, again, as we've said, it's our job to apply the law. I don't have the power to change the law. I don't have the power to change the things that have happened before someone comes into my courtroom. But what I can do is when that does come before me and I see it, I can try to make it right. If someone was stopped and searched in violation of their Fourth Amendment rights, then that evidence will get suppressed. If someone was interrogated in violation without Miranda rights in violation of their Fifth Amendment rights, then that statement gets suppressed. If a victim comes to court, and I've had this experience, I've handled the most serious cases in our county, sexual assaults, homicides. When those victims come to court, they feel like that they have been treated unjustly by the person who harmed them. So I would give her or that victim an opportunity to be heard with compassion, because I think that compassion always comes in when a victim is speaking. Their trauma is something that we don't understand, but we have to try to empathize with. So that's how I would deal with injustice when it comes in front of me, by treating everyone fairly, giving them a voice, and making decisions based on the law with the remedies that the legislature has given me.
Okay, and with, thank you very much. With 5 minutes, Joe, can we jump to question?
Yolanda, I still have to.
Angela Cunningham.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Angela. Go right ahead.
So one of the most effective ways to address injustice is to have access to quality legal representation. That's why people go to the courts, to find justice, and the quality of your legal representation makes a huge difference. And one of the biggest ways that I see injustice show up in the courtroom is when people are self-represented. And a lot of times you see that in civil legal cases because you don't have a right to a lawyer. And so one thing that I want to do as judge is to advocate for some assistance for people who are pro se to have representation, or at the very least get some legal advice so that they know what their rights are, so that they come to court better prepared, because that is a huge injustice to come to court unprepared, especially if you're up against someone who does have a lawyer, or who does know their legal rights, and they use that to unjustly kind of trample over the other individual. I see it all the time. As a private bar attorney, I have advised individuals about how to prepare for court. And so for me, dealing with injustice, especially when it comes to civil matters, is trying to make sure as many people as possible are able to speak with a lawyer and get some legal advice about their situation. When it comes to criminal matters, it will be making sure that the state is meeting their burden, making sure that the law enforcement and others who are bringing a case before the courts has followed the law. That also means ensuring that people who have been victims of crimes are given a fair voice in the courtroom. And, you see with domestic violence victims a lot is they aren't believed, or their stories aren't taken seriously, so they don't feel like they get the justice that they should get in court. So my background would allow me to ensure that everybody's voice is heard and that justice is performed in the courtroom while following the law and being fair and impartial to all parties.
Okay, thank you. And Daryl, if we could just deviate a little bit, I think the last question, because we're almost at 8 o'clock, is pretty important. So if you would allow all the candidates to answer question number 10. And if you want to read that, and we could start with the branch 1 candidates, and then the branch 6 candidates answer the same question, and then we'll close out the question part of this forum.
Okay, so let's do this. And so we can, we'll throw a curveball at them.
Okay.
I'll read the question, Yoga will repeat it, and Yolanda, if you want to come up with a random order, right, by which we'll ask for the response. So we're getting crazy now here today. So here's the question, and Yoga, if you could repeat it when I'm done stating it. When you see a defendant in court whose first language is not English, how do you determine that if they are able to understand every step of the process.
Cuando recibe a un acusado en su sala de corte cuyo primer idioma no es el inglés, ¿cómo determina usted que están entendiendo cada paso de ese proceso?
And I'll read it one more time. When you see a defendant in court whose first language is not English, how are you able to determine if they're able to understand the entire process? So.
And we'll start with branch 1, and we'll start with, let's see, DeVillo first, and then Benita Morgan second. Let's start there.
So the curveball was there is no curveball. That's a curveball. So and this happens quite often when you have somebody come into court, and as I spoke, every week we have our driver's license recovery program court, and a disproportionate amount of the community that comes in for those cases are people of color, and then there's a lot of people who their first language is not English. And one of the things that as we progress with this program in this court that I also pushed with my clerk of courts was having a full-time on-staff interpreter available. So we didn't have to have one scheduled for certain people or certain cases. We always have one in the building, accessible, certified, and ready to go. Also, I took 4 years of Spanish in college, but it did not retain with me as well as it should have. But I have a sheet. I have a sheet of questions that, tú necesito un intérprete, and tell them that we'll have one for them soon. And we bring that person that we have on staff. So we have that person available so we can address that and we can hear those cases. We're not stuck rescheduling it, giving them a piece of paper and hoping the best that they come back. So that way we can hear those people and they haven't wasted their time and they're not being taken advantage of in any way, shape, or form as a result of not being able to speak English. Thank you.
Thank you. And Larissa?
Well, yeah, this wasn't a hard one either. We do one better than that here in Kenosha County. We already have interpreters already on the standby. Every day in adult intake, bond court, there is an interpreter ready to go. We already have a traffic diversion court, just like we have a family court commissioner, and we have another court commissioner that does the juvenile and the prelims and that sort of thing. So there already is a Spanish-speaking interpreter always on standby right there. When a case gets filed in Kenosha County, if an interpreter is needed, it's assigned at the beginning. So they don't come to court to then find out we need an interpreter. We know up front, we already have one ready. The wonderful feature about doing things on Zoom is we have an interpreter function. If you set up your Zoom meeting and you select your interpreter, every kind of interpreter you want somebody who speaks Croatian, no problem, we set it up. So every time you come to court, we already have an interpreter there and ready to go. All of the judges, we all know how to use the interpreter function. So court is seamless. We have the interpreter, you set a breakout room, they meet with the interpreter, they get the lay of the land, and then they come in. We also, if we know that they need an attorney, they have an attorney assigned to them as well, either through the public defender's office or advocate counsel appointed by the court. So we try to take care of those issues up front when it comes to interpreters. We've been very strong with that. And we find out from the very beginning, the district attorney's office is great because they also let us know when somebody's been arrested or they're filing a criminal charge that this person requires an interpreter. That's how we've been able to get interpreters from various dialects from Russia that nobody knew about, or Vietnamese dialects. We've been able to have them on their very first court appearance. So we take very good care of that in Kenosha.
Thank you. Yolanda, who's next?
Okay, next is going to be Angela Cunningham, and I'm just going to repeat the question. It is, when you see a defendant in court whose first language is not English, how do you determine that they are understanding every step of the process?
So it's an easy scenario when it's clear that someone doesn't speak English or they speak very little English. And I would do exactly what Judge Luisa Benitez Morgan and Jared pointed out. go get an interpreter to make sure that the individual understands what's going on and has somebody interpreting the proceedings. The nuanced part is when you have someone who knows enough English to make it seem like they understand what's going on, but they really do not understand what's going on. And I've represented clients who understood enough English to kind of have the appearance that they understand what's going on. Sometimes I think that becomes a coping mechanism when you're in situations where people who are speaking around you are speaking English and that's not your dominant language. And the key is to ask questions that are not yes and no questions. Because you ask a yes and no question, somebody can say yes and no, you really don't know if they understand what's going on. But you start asking questions that require a much more involved response, then it gives you a chance to understand whether or not that individual truly understands what's going on, and you know that you need to call an interpreter to ensure that that person gets every word and understands every word that's going on.
Okay, next, Gabriella.
So this is something that I have encountered in court. And so I'm quite aware of the situations. And as Larissa mentioned, we are fortunate in Kenosha that we have these interpreters on staff. And not only do we have the interpreters available, we have a very liberal attitude towards using the interpreters. So even if someone comes to court and speaks some English, but maybe doesn't understand all the words, but says, well, I think I can do it, we keep the interpreters there because we understand that there are nuances to these issues. They're complicated legal issues. People who have English as their first language don't understand these legal issues. So you really need an interpreter there to answer any particular question, to interpret some of those more difficult concepts, so that this person will understand every step of the way. The other thing that I'm aware of, because I am bilingual, I grew up, my father was Italian, spoke Italian, learned English as I was learning English. I understand that there are different dialects, that there are nuances, that someone who speaks Spanish speaks it differently if they're from Puerto Rico than if they're from Mexico. And so I think as judge, we have to be really cognizant of that difference, so that a word that might mean something in Puerto Rico means something different in Mexico. And there, you do, as judge, have to ask a lot of questions to make sure that the person is understanding even what the interpreter is telling them. It does take extra work, but it's critically important. There's so much at stake in these cases. I've had, Spanish speaking defendants plead to sexual assaults. This is important. They need to understand what they're doing. And I would never want even the appearance that someone was taking advantage of that, or even the thought that perhaps this person did not fully understand. So, there's that awareness that's so important on so many issues that we've discussed tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all of the candidates for your quick responses. None of the candidates knew what questions were going to be asked this evening. I think you all did an excellent job. So this concludes our question and answer session of this forum. And we're going to move now, Daryl, into the closing remarks. We're going to allow 3 minutes each for your closing remarks. And I think we can start in reverse order from how we did the introductions. And let's start with the branch 6, Angelina Gabriel, followed by Angela Cunningham for your 3-minute closing remark. And then we'll move on to branch 1.
Okay. Thank you so much. I've said this many times throughout my campaign. I'll say it again here. My campaign slogan is experience counts. But I ask that you really look beyond the slogan for the substance beyond these words. Please go to my webpage, go to Angie for Judge, look me up on Facebook. I have videos on Facebook that I've done talking about different issues related to justice and what it means to be a prosecutor, what it means to be a judge, and how it all ties together. For 25 years, I have dedicated myself to protecting the most vulnerable in our community, children, women who are domestically abused, who've been sexually assaulted, the elderly. And I have worked very long hours to bring justice to those victims and to be open-minded to solutions that will protect our community for defendants and victims alike, because it all goes hand in hand together. I've worked really hard over these years to master my craft in order to benefit our community. The experience that I bring to the bench handling serious sexual assaults, homicide cases, child homicide, child abuse cases, the complicated legal issues that come with them and the trials is what gives me the judgment, not only as it relates to the legal issues, but to handle any kind of case. You know, as district attorney, we have such an important role. I've talked about my discretion as district attorney, whether to charge, what offer to make, what sentence to recommend, whether to offer diversion. These are all issues that a prosecutor has to address from a variety of perspectives, from the perspective of community safety, from the perspective of a defense attorney, from the perspective of a judge. And I have chosen to remain in that profession, in that career, because I think it's so important that we have someone who can exercise that discretion fairly and appropriately. And that's what I bring to the bench. I also have this unique perspective with my personal life. And I think that's really important too, with the foster children that I've had, and their family experiences have really benefited me to make the right decisions, because it's always been about doing the right thing for our community.
Thank you. Angela Cunningham.
Sorry. I was reminded today by a local coalition that I'm a part of that is Cesar Chavez Day today. A famous quote from Cesar Chavez is, "The love for justice that is in us is not only the best part of our being, but is also the most true to our nature." Justice is most true to my nature. I went to law school because I was working with individuals who were not getting justice in the court system because they didn't have access to a lawyer. I've shown through my career as an attorney, I have helped achieve justice for victims of domestic violence as representing victims of domestic violence and in family law and in restraining order hearings as a public interest attorney. I have helped victims achieve justice as a prosecutor and ensuring to keep the community safe. I've helped people who have been charged with crimes achieve justice as a defense attorney. I have helped individuals who were dealing with housing issues, consumer issues, and other civil issues achieve justice by making sure that they had representation, or at the very least knew what their rights are and were prepared when they showed up to court. And now I'm running for judge to ensure justice for all on the bench. My breadth of personal and professional experience will allow me to bring a perspective to the bench that is fresh. I will apply the law while also bringing new and fresh ideas to try to deal with the inequalities we see that are based on race, that are based on income, that are based on other things that people come to the court and bar them from having equal justice under the law. I will be fair, I will be impartial, I will be tough, I will keep our community safe, but most of all, I will ensure justice for all. I ask for your vote on April 6th. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have Larissa Benitez Morgan. Your closing remarks, 3 minutes.
Thank you once again for the invitation to speak with you tonight. For the past year, I've had the privilege of serving Kenosha as a circuit court judge for Branch 1, ensuring individuals have their day in court and that justice is served. And because I've not only lived in Kenosha for going on 24 years now, but I've actually chosen to work here in Kenosha, I know what systems and courts we already have in place and how they work, such as our diversion courts and our traffic court and all the other things and resources we have available for people within our court system. I've also gotten to know the people who live and work here And within the court system, all our service providers, foster families, other attorneys, the judges, the court staff, law enforcement, and they've gotten to know me. And what they've seen is that I'm knowledgeable of the law, I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated, I'm fair, I'm respectful, and I believe in accountability for everyone. Kenosha County has come to count on me to ensure justice for everyone I've ever represented, and now as a judge, to ensure justice for everyone who comes before the court. And they also know my commitment to not only upholding the law as enacted by the legislature, but for upholding my commitment to the people of Kenosha County. I'm endorsed by members of the Kenosha community, from local attorneys, both prosecutors and defense, judges, including retired Kenosha Judge Wilbur Warren III, law enforcement, government officials, current and retired, unions, foster parents, and everyday citizens. My endorsements are from here in Kenosha County, where people have had the opportunity to see and evaluate my work ethic, my knowledge, my dedication, and my character. Judges are tasked with making legal decisions. These decisions impact not only the people who come before the court, but they impact the community as a whole. They're complex decisions, decisions that determine whether somebody goes to jail or prison or corrections, who gets custody of the children, what evidence comes in at trial, whether or not to terminate someone's terminate their parental rights. There's only one candidate for Circuit Court Branch 1 who's made these decisions. One candidate's presided over jury and court trials. One candidate, when presented with an opportunity to serve Kenosha as a Kenosha Assistant District Attorney, a Kenosha Assistant State Public Defender, a Kenosha Guardian ad litem, or a Kenosha Court Commissioner, chose service to Kenosha over all the other surrounding counties. And that candidate is me.
Thank you.
And I believe Kenosha voters want a circuit court judge with a proven legal and judicial track record of service here in Kenosha. And that's why I'm asking for your vote on April 6th to keep me on the bench for circuit court judge for Branch 1. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Yolanda, we have
Jared DeVillo.
Jared. Yep. And Jared, why don't you just take an extra 10 or 15 seconds as well, just so we can even things out there. Okay.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
All right, thanks. As you heard from all of the other candidates, everybody's got a kind of nice laid out script of the reasons they should vote for them and why they're the best. I certainly had mine as well. I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to stray from that a bit though, because of some of the things that we've talked about and some of the things that have come up here. Everybody here who's watching and participating and sending in questions and things like that, you're all here because it's not only because you care, but you have a vested interest, and you know that if you thought the system was great as is, you wouldn't be paying much attention to it, because why else? The status quo is fine. And these questions really spoke to that. When we talked about identifying people who need an interpreter, things like that. We hear some people brag about how great the system is. Well, if the system is so great, then why are these questions being asked? Why are we addressing this? And I know absolutely the system is not perfect as is. For the better part of the last 15 years, I spent every Sunday morning and every Thursday night with a couple hundred members of the Latino community playing soccer. 90% of the league that I play in on both of those days are people who are Latinos. And I've made a lot of friendships, a lot of positive relationships, and I've certainly talked about their experiences when they're coming to court, and a lot of that being in Kenosha. So when I hear these questions that we addressed today, a lot of it isn't surprising. So to pretend that things are perfect the way they are is simply flawed mentality. And it's exactly the kind of mentality that we need to overcome and that we need to change here. If we're going to grow as a community and we're going to come together as a community, we need the people on the bench who have a proven history of doing that. I'm the person who has done that. This isn't part of a campaign pitch or part of a slogan. My dedication to my work, to service, and to making the court system all around a better place for everybody who's involved is something that my track record shows. And that's why I have the support of people in Kenosha. I have the support of people in Racine. I have the support of people in Walworth County. And I'm very proud of that. So do your homework, DougVilloforJudge.com. And if you're voting early, whether it's tomorrow or Friday, or if you vote on April 6th, I ask that you vote for Jared Dougvillo for Branch 1. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again. We appreciate those closing remarks, and this brings us to the end of the forum, just about. And I'm going to allow at least 5 minutes for Forward Latino to close out this forum. Daryl?
Well, thank you very much, Yolanda. And let me tip my hat to you. It's for your leadership that this forum took place this evening. I want to thank our other lead organizer in Kenosha County, Yoga Aguilar, for joining us and providing these services. And of course, big round of a virtual applause for all the candidates. It's one thing to say that we need to work to change the system. It's another thing to actually walk into the arena and attempt to be that change. So I want to thank all of you for your years of service and for putting yourselves out there to try and, well, to the betterment of all of our community. Don't have too much to say other than it's imperative. It's imperative for everyone, whether you're Latino, whether you're in the African-American community, Asian, or a member of a non-minority, et cetera. It's important that everybody engage in democracy in our country and participate in this process. If you have any questions as to what you'll need to vote, where to vote, et cetera, don't hesitate. Give us a call at 833-LATINO, that's with an O, not a 0 at the end, and the number 1, and we'll get you that information immediately. It's when you go to the voting booth, it's when you cast your ballot that America is at its best, and that we can choose the direction we want our country to take. So once again, I want to thank our organizers for this evening. I want to thank our participants here, and I wish everybody tremendous luck. And once again, if anyone has any questions, just visit us at www.forwardlatino.org. Thank you all once again, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.